What is the meaning of life? It's a question that has echoed through time, whispering from the shadows of ancient temples, from the corners of philosophers' minds, and from the quiet moments when we lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering what it's all for. Tonight, as you close your eyes and drift into sleep, we'll gently explore the deep, timeless reflections that humankind has pondered for thousands of years. We'll float through the ideas of ancient philosophers and modern thinkers alike. We'll explore science, spirituality, art, and the human experience, not to find a single answer, but to embrace the beautiful complexity of the question itself. So let your body relax, let your breathing slow, and let your mind wander with me, gently and curiously, into the mysterious landscape of human thought. We begin, as so many things do, in the ancient world. Part 1. The ancient seeds of meaning. Long before the rise of modern civilization, early humans looked up at the stars and down at the earth and asked themselves, "Why am I here?" In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the first recorded civilizations, people believed that humans were created by the gods to serve them, to farm the land, build temples, and maintain the divine order. Life in that view was about duty and devotion. But as we travel west to ancient Egypt, we find a more complex perspective. Egyptians believed in the soul's journey beyond death. They imagined an afterlife filled with judgment, transformation, and rebirth. The meaning of life, then, was to live honorably, to prepare for eternity. And then there were the ancient Greeks. Philosophy, as we know it today, was born in ancient Greece. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, famously said that the unexamined life is not worth living. For him, life was about self-reflection, ethics, and dialogue. He didn't offer answers so much as he asked better questions. His student Plato envisioned a world of perfect forms, a higher realm of truth and beauty that this world only dimly reflects. Life, for Plato, was about transcending the material and connecting with the eternal. Aristotle, Plato's student, offered a different view. He believed the meaning of life was found in achieving eudaimonia, a Greek word often translated as flourishing or fulfillment. For Aristotle, this meant living in accordance with reason, virtue, and one's true nature. These early thinkers planted the seeds of inquiry that would continue to grow for centuries. But across the world, in ancient India, other seeds were blooming. Part 2. Eastern Wisdom and the Inner Journey. Around the same time as Socrates and Plato, Indian philosophers were composing the Upanishads, texts that probed the nature of reality, the self, and the divine. According to the Upanishads, beneath our changing thoughts, emotions, and identities lies the Atman, the true self, which is one with Brahman, the infinite, formless source of all things. To realize this truth, one must look inward. Life's meaning, then, is not found in outward achievements, but in inner realization. This idea formed the heart of many Eastern traditions. In Buddhism, for instance, life is seen as a cycle of suffering caused by desire and ignorance. But through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, one can awaken and be liberated from this cycle. Buddha did not concern himself with metaphysical speculation. He once said, "I teach only suffering and the end of suffering." For him, the path to meaning was not about answering cosmic questions, but learning how to live with clarity and kindness. In China, Confucius offered a different approach. He emphasized relationships, rituals, and social harmony. The meaning of life, he taught, was found in fulfilling one's roles with respect, sincerity, and a sense of moral duty. His contemporary, Laozi, took another path. In the Tao Te Ching, Laozi described the Tao, the way, a mysterious force that flows through all life. To find meaning, one must align with this natural flow, living simply, humbly, and in harmony with nature. These Eastern perspectives offered profound alternatives to Western views. Instead of conquering life, we harmonize with it. Instead of seeking external truths, we discover inner peace. Part 3. Religious Visions and the Promise of Purpose. As civilizations grew and religions expanded, new visions of life's meaning emerged. In Judaism, life is a gift from God, and meaning is found in covenant, in the relationship between God and humanity. The Torah offers guidance on how to live justly, compassionately, and faithfully. Christianity deepened this vision. According to Christian belief, life's meaning is found in love of God and of neighbor. Jesus taught that the greatest commandments are to love God with all your heart and to love others as yourself. Life, then, is a journey of grace, redemption, and divine love. Islam, too, offers a rich sense of purpose. The Quran describes life as a test, a trust, and a blessing. Muslims are called to live in submission to Allah's will, to seek justice, to care for others, and to remember that this life is a preparation for the next. In all these traditions, meaning is not self-generated. It's received, revealed, and lived in relationship to the divine. And yet, even within religious worlds, doubt and mystery remain. The Book of Ecclesiastes, for instance, famously proclaims, "Meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless." It speaks to the existential despair that can haunt even the faithful, which brings us to a new era, a time when old certainties begin to waver and new questions arise. Part 4. The Modern Mind and the Search Within. The Enlightenment brought a revolution in thought. Science, reason, and human rights took center stage. Many began to question traditional beliefs and to seek meaning through rational inquiry. But the more science explained, the more some felt a kind of emptiness. The universe, once seen as a divine creation, now appeared vast, indifferent, and mechanical. Darwin's theory of evolution suggested that humans were not the center of creation, but the product of chance and natural selection. So what does it mean to be human in a godless universe? Existentialist philosophers like Soren Kierkegaard, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Jean-Paul Sartre wrestled with this question. Kierkegaard, a Christian thinker, believed that true meaning required a leap of faith. Nietzsche, by contrast, declared that God is dead and urged humanity to create its own values. Sartre famously said that existence precedes essence. We are not born with a purpose. We must create our own. Life has no inherent meaning, but we can choose to live authentically, freely, and with responsibility. This idea can be terrifying, but also liberating. As Albert Camus wrote, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Even in a meaningless universe, we can find joy, courage, and beauty in the act of living." Part 5. Science, Consciousness, and Cosmic Wonder. Modern science has not only expanded our knowledge, it has deepened our sense of mystery. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. Our planet formed 4.5 billion years ago. Life evolved through countless forms, leading to the emergence of consciousness, a phenomenon we still do not fully understand. What is this strange awareness that lets us reflect on ourselves, imagine other worlds, and ask about meaning? Some scientists see consciousness as a byproduct of the brain, a complex illusion. Others wonder if it points to something deeper, even fundamental to the universe itself. Meanwhile, cosmologists explore the fabric of space and time. Quantum physics reveals a reality that defies logic, where particles exist in multiple states and distant events are mysteriously connected. And yet, in this grand unknowable cosmos, we find ourselves tiny, fleeting, fragile, and yet capable of love, of laughter, of art, and insight. Is that not meaningful? Carl Sagan once said, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." In that sense, perhaps the universe is not meaningless. It's becoming self-aware through us. Part 6. The Art of Living. In the search for life's meaning, not everyone turns to the stars, the scriptures, or the sciences. For many, the answer is found in the way we live, the choices we make, the habits we build, and the values we embody. This idea forms the foundation of many philosophies that fall under what can be called the art of living. The Stoics, a group of ancient Greek and Roman philosophers, were among the first to approach life this way. Figures like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius believed that meaning wasn't something you discovered, but something you cultivated. Life, they argued, is unpredictable and often harsh, but what matters is how we respond. To the Stoics, the only thing truly within our control is our own mind, our judgments, our choices, our character. Everything else, wealth, fame, health, even the actions of others, are externals. Their advice was simple: focus on what you can control and let go of the rest. Virtue, they said, is the only true good. And virtue consists in living with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. This approach didn't rely on metaphysics or divine intervention. It was grounded in experience, in how we live each moment. It offered a kind of practical serenity, not through escapism, but through resilience. In a similar vein, existentialist thinkers like Viktor Frankl brought this idea into the modern age. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote that the primary human drive is not pleasure or power, but meaning. In the concentration camps, he observed that those who survived were not always the strongest, but those who had a reason to live, a sense of purpose, even in suffering. Frankl's method, known as logotherapy, helps individuals find meaning through work, love, and the courage to endure hardship. His conclusion was profound. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. For others, the art of living is expressed through creativity and beauty. The French philosopher Albert Camus believed that life, though absurd, could be faced with style. He admired the artist, the rebel, the thinker who lives with integrity, even when the universe offers no guarantees. Art, in this light, is more than decoration. It's a defiance against despair. To create beauty in a world that can be indifferent or even cruel is to affirm life. Whether through painting, music, writing, or the simple act of cooking a meal with care, these are acts of meaning. They turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. And so, for many, life's meaning lies not in what we find, but in what we make. Part 7. Psychology and human connection. Modern psychology, though once focused mostly on pathology, has increasingly turned toward well-being. Positive psychology, in particular, seeks to understand what makes life worth living. Psychologist Martin Seligman, one of the field's pioneers, identified 5 elements that contribute to human flourishing: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, summed up by the acronym PERMA. Of these, meaning and relationships stand out. Humans are social creatures. We are wired for connection. Studies consistently show that strong, supportive relationships are one of the best predictors of happiness and longevity. Loneliness, on the other hand, is linked to poor health outcomes and psychological distress. From this perspective, meaning arises through our ties to others. Through friendship, family, mentorship, and love, we find ourselves mirrored and valued. We matter, not in isolation, but in relation. The psychologist Abraham Maslow proposed a hierarchy of needs, culminating in self-actualization, the fulfillment of one's potential. But later in life, he revised his model, placing self-transcendence above self-actualization. He recognized that many people find their deepest purpose not by looking inward, but by contributing to something greater than themselves. This insight is echoed in countless personal stories. A parent caring for a child, a teacher guiding students, a nurse comforting a patient. In these moments, meaning is not abstract. It's embodied. It's in the doing, in the giving. Empathy, too, plays a vital role. The ability to see the world through another's eyes, to feel with rather than just for someone, expands our sense of self. In that expansion, many find purpose. Psychologists like Carl Rogers and Rollo May emphasized authenticity and self-awareness as keys to a meaningful life. The more we live in alignment with our true values, not those imposed by society, but those we discover for ourselves, the more whole we feel. In the therapy room, meaning often arises not through answers, but through the process of making sense, through story, reflection, and the courage to confront one's own contradictions. And while no one can hand us meaning, we are all capable of weaving it from the threads of our own experience. Part 8. Mortality and Legacy. No exploration of life's meaning can avoid the question of death. It is the one certainty, the one equalizer. Whether king or pauper, philosopher or farmer, all must face the end. For some, this is a source of dread. For others, a motivation. The philosopher Martin Heidegger argued that it is only by confronting our mortality that we truly come alive. Awareness of death, he said, wakes us from the distractions of the everyday and calls us to authenticity. The Roman poet Horace famously wrote, "Carpe diem, seize the day," not in reckless indulgence, but in recognition that time is finite. Each moment matters precisely because it is fleeting. Legacy offers one response to mortality. What we leave behind, our actions, our words, our influence, can ripple far beyond our lifespan. Parents shape children. Teachers shape minds. Artists shape culture. In this way, a part of us endures. Even small acts, kindness, honesty, generosity, can have lasting effects. A smile, a listening ear, a helping hand. These moments, though easily overlooked, accumulate. They form a life well lived. Religious traditions have long grappled with death through the promise of an afterlife. Whether heaven, reincarnation, or union with the divine, these beliefs offer hope that death is not the end. But even without such beliefs, many find meaning in the cycle itself. Just as fallen leaves nourish new growth, our lives contribute to a story larger than ourselves. Philosopher Alan Watts suggested that life and death are not opposites, but parts of the same rhythm. Just as music needs silence and stories need endings, so too does life gain richness from its impermanence. In knowing we will die, we learn how to live. Part 9. Meaning without answers. Throughout history, humans have yearned for certainty, for a fixed, reliable answer to life's great question. But what if the search for a single answer is itself the wrong question? What if the richness of life comes not from finding certainty, but from learning to live with uncertainty? Philosophers like Ludwig Wittgenstein and Richard Rorty challenged the idea that meaning is something fixed or discoverable in a universal sense. Wittgenstein proposed that the meaning of a word or a life depends on its use in context. Meaning is not static, it's relational. It's something we live, not something we define. Rorty took this further, suggesting that truth itself is not something we uncover, but something we create through dialogue, solidarity, and evolving vocabularies. For him, life's meaning lies in conversation, in the ever-shifting stories we tell ourselves and each other. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves." There is a kind of quiet wisdom in letting go of the need to solve life, and instead choosing to inhabit it, to be present, to wonder, to create, to feel. Mindfulness traditions offer a similar view. In practices like meditation, meaning is not found through thinking or striving, but through awareness, being fully present with whatever arises. There's no grand solution, no cosmic blueprint. There is only this moment and how we meet it. In a world that often values certainty and control, this perspective can feel uncomfortable. But it also opens up space for compassion, for curiosity, for creativity, and perhaps that is enough. Part 10. The question itself. We've wandered through ancient temples and modern laboratories, through scriptures, paintings, and personal stories. We've listened to the voices of sages, scientists, poets, and psychologists. Each has offered a glimpse, a possibility, a lens through which to view the question. And yet, no answer holds the final word. Because the meaning of life may not be a destination, but a journey. Not a conclusion, but a question. Not a thing to be grasped, but a way of being. Maybe meaning is found in the pursuit itself, in the act of asking, wondering, seeking, in the conversations we share, the risks we take, the loves we hold, the stories we tell. Maybe it is found in the small things, in a gesture of kindness, a shared laugh, a moment of awe. Or maybe it's not found at all, but made, woven, step by step, through the fabric of our days. As the philosopher Albert Schweitzer once said, "The purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others." And as the poet Mary Oliver asked, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" That question, perhaps more than any answer, is the point. So we return to where we began. What is the meaning of life? It is the question that calls us to reflect, to connect, to live with intention. It is the thread that ties together the mystic and the scientist, the philosopher and the artist, the child and the elder. It is, in the end, not a sentence to be completed, but a poem to be lived. Part 11. The role of myth and story. Stories shape us. Long before written language, before philosophy or science, humans told stories. They gathered around fires and spoke of gods, monsters, heroes, and the forces that shaped their world. These myths were not merely entertainment. They were frameworks, ways of making sense of the chaos, of passing down wisdom, of linking the individual to the collective and the present to the eternal. The psychologist Carl Jung suggested that myths contain archetypes, universal patterns buried deep within the human psyche. These figures and narratives appear across cultures: the hero's journey, the wise elder, the innocent child, the trickster. They surface in ancient tales, in religious scriptures, in dreams, and even in modern films. Joseph Campbell expanded this idea in The Hero with 1,000 Faces, where he outlined the monomyth, a single story arc that runs through countless traditions. A hero receives a call to adventure, crosses into the unknown, faces trials, receives guidance, and returns transformed. This isn't just a story, it's a mirror. It reflects the challenges of life, the transformation we undergo through struggle, and the renewal we find in growth. Whether we view life as a literal journey or a symbolic one, story gives shape to experience. Even in secular times, we still live by story. Nations tell stories about their founding. Families pass down ancestral tales. Individuals build narratives about their pasts, their identities, and their hopes. In a way, meaning is the story we tell ourselves about what life is and who we are. To lose the thread of our story is to feel lost. But to rewrite it, to reframe a hardship as a lesson, to see oneself as a character growing over time, is to reclaim a sense of purpose. We are not just meaning seekers, we are meaning makers, and story is our primary tool. Part 12. Play, wonder, and the unplanned. Sometimes meaning arises not from effort or reflection, but from spontaneity, from moments of surprise, of play, of joy. Children understand this intuitively. They do not ask, "What is the meaning of life?" They simply live it. They chase butterflies, build castles from sand, and turn cardboard boxes into spaceships. This quality of wonder, of presence, of curiosity, it fades in adulthood, but it is not lost. Artists, inventors, and mystics often speak of inspiration as something that cannot be forced. It arrives when one is open, when one plays. The musician enters flow. The poet follows a strange metaphor. The scientist, in idle thought, has a sudden insight. Play is not trivial. It's creative freedom. It's the realm where rules bend, where risk becomes delight, where new connections form. In many spiritual traditions, play holds sacred meaning. In Hinduism, the concept of Leela suggests that the universe itself is a divine play, the dance of creation and destruction, of form and formlessness. The gods play, and in their play, the cosmos arises. This idea reframes everything. If existence is not a test or a punishment, but a play, a creative unfolding, then perhaps our role is not to win or to solve, but to participate fully, joyfully. Wonder, too, opens a door to meaning, not the kind of wonder that demands answers, but the kind that stands in awe before a starry sky, a newborn child, or a moment of perfect silence. In such moments, thought recedes, and what remains is presence, deep, resonant, alive. Part 13. Suffering, Compassion, and the Shared Path. No exploration of meaning can be complete without facing the reality of suffering. Every life encounters it, through loss, illness, disappointment, or injustice. At times, suffering can eclipse everything else, calling into question the value or sense of life itself. But suffering, paradoxically, also opens the door to some of the deepest forms of meaning. It's in suffering that we discover the strength of compassion, both in ourselves and in others. It's in sorrow that we learn to listen, to soften, to connect. Many wisdom traditions teach that suffering is not something to be eliminated entirely, but to be understood, to be transformed. The Buddha, upon seeing old age, sickness, and death for the first time, left behind his royal life in search of answers. What he found was not a way to avoid pain, but a way to relate to it differently, with clarity, with detachment, with love. The Jewish philosopher Emmanuel Levinas argued that the face of the other, the vulnerable, suffering other, is the source of ethical responsibility. To encounter another's pain is to be called into moral relationship. We are not isolated beings. We exist in a web of interconnection. This recognition that we are not alone in our suffering can be transformative. It can dissolve the illusion of separateness and awaken a sense of shared humanity. In the Christian tradition, the image of Christ suffering on the cross serves not just as a symbol of sacrifice, but as a profound identification with human pain. In his suffering, God is not above or outside, but with us. And in modern psychology, trauma, while devastating, is also seen as a potential site of growth. The concept of post-traumatic growth suggests that individuals who face deep suffering often develop greater empathy, clarity of values, and a stronger sense of purpose. Suffering, then, while never desired, can reveal truths that ease and comfort often obscure. It can deepen us, humble us, humanize us, and in that it can point us, again and again, toward meaning. Part 14. Time, Change, and the Meaning of Moments. Time is the silent backdrop to all our experiences. It stretches infinitely in both directions, past and future, yet we only ever live in the present. Many philosophies have meditated on time. Some have viewed it as linear, a progression from beginning to end. Others, like some ancient Indian and Mayan traditions, saw it as cyclical, an eternal return where seasons, lives, and epochs repeat in endless variation. Whatever the model, time brings with it change. Nothing stays the same. Children grow, mountains erode, stars burn out. Everything we know and love is in motion. This can be unsettling, but it is also what makes life meaningful. If every moment were frozen, if nothing could ever change, there would be no growth, no learning, no memory. Meaning is born in time, in the passage, in the transitions, in the preciousness of now. The ancient philosopher Heraclitus said, "You cannot step into the same river twice. The river flows, and so do we." This awareness invites us to live more attentively, to notice the texture of daily life, the way sunlight moves across a floor, the tone in someone's voice, the rhythm of breathing in the stillness of morning. In the Buddhist tradition, this is known as impermanence, anicca. Clinging leads to suffering. Letting go leads to freedom. And in that freedom, there is a kind of peace, not from escape, but from participation. To live with time, to be present to the passing, to honor the moment, is to touch something sacred. Part 15. Simplicity and the beauty of the ordinary. In the modern world, it's easy to believe that meaning lies in achievement, in status, in being extraordinary, but often it's the ordinary things that stay with us the longest. The scent of a childhood meal, a kind gesture from a stranger, the laughter of a friend. Many great thinkers have emphasized the value of simplicity. The Roman philosopher Seneca advised reducing one's desires. The Quakers spoke of the beauty of plainness. The poet Walt Whitman found grandeur in blades of grass and city sidewalks. When we strip away the noise, what remains is often what matters most. Love, attention, presence. Leo Tolstoy, toward the end of his life, abandoned wealth and fame to live simply, seeking moral clarity. In his writings, he asked not how to live successfully, but how to live rightly. And in cultures across the globe, there are traditions that honor simplicity, not as lack, but as richness. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi finds beauty in imperfection and transience. The Danish idea of hygge celebrates coziness and contentment in the everyday. These are not theories, they are ways of being. To cook a meal with care, to listen without distraction, to sit quietly and watch the rain. These moments may never be recorded in history, but they are where life happens, where meaning lives. Part 16. Identity and becoming. Who are we? It's one of the central questions of philosophy and psychology, and it's closely tied to meaning. Are we a fixed self, a soul, a personality, a collection of traits, or are we always becoming? The ancient Greek maxim, "Know thyself," invites introspection, but modern thinkers often emphasize the fluidity of identity. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that existence precedes essence, that we are not born with a fixed nature, but define ourselves through action. Every choice is a brushstroke in the painting of a life. Simone de Beauvoir, too, emphasized becoming. One is not born, but rather becomes, she wrote, especially when speaking of the ways society shapes gender and roles. Her insight extends to all of us. We are shaped by culture, by history, by relationships, but also by the ways we respond. Modern psychology sees identity not as a static entity, but as a narrative, a story we tell ourselves about who we are. That story can evolve. It can be reinterpreted. It can be rewritten. This is empowering. It means we are not bound by the past. We are not defined by our mistakes. We are participants in our own becoming. Meaning, then, is not something we find out there. It is something we live into, day by day, word by word, step by step. Part 17. Technology, Progress, and the Digital Soul. In the modern age, our search for meaning unfolds in a world transformed by technology. We live connected lives. Messages traverse the globe in seconds. Knowledge is abundant, and digital networks shape our identities. But this new world brings both possibility and challenge. Technology extends our senses. Telescopes show us galaxies billions of light years away. Algorithms predict patterns invisible to the human mind. Artificial intelligence models language, behavior, even creativity. And yet, for all its power, technology cannot answer the question of why. It can tell us how things work, but not what they mean. It can optimize our habits, but not tell us which ones matter. It can offer connection, but also distraction. Some thinkers warn of a deepening spiritual void. As screens dominate our attention and virtual realities replace physical ones, we risk losing touch with slowness, with stillness, with the face-to-face intimacy that grounds meaning. But others see promise. The internet, for instance, allows for a vast sharing of ideas, for marginalized voices to be heard, for communities to form around shared values. In digital spaces, people find belonging. They share stories, they ask questions, they build things together. These, too, are acts of meaning. As we move further into a world shaped by machines, the question is not whether technology is good or bad, but how we will use it. Will we let it serve human flourishing, or will we lose ourselves in its noise? The answer, once again, lies not in the tools, but in the choices we make. Part 18. Silence, Solitude, and the Inner World. Amid the busyness of life, meaning often waits in silence. Throughout history, mystics, monks, poets, and seekers have turned inward, not to escape the world, but to hear it more clearly. The desert fathers of early Christianity withdrew into the wilderness, seeking simplicity and divine presence. Buddhist monks spent months in silent retreat. Sufi mystics danced into ecstasy. Even the Stoics valued solitude, not as isolation, but as clarity. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the space in which something deeper can be heard. Modern life offers little of it. Constant notifications, endless scrolling, background noise, all conspire to fill the quiet. But without silence, reflection fades, insight fades, meaning slips through the cracks. To sit alone, not in loneliness but in stillness, is a radical act. It is to say, I am enough. This moment is enough. In solitude, we remember who we are beneath the roles and demands. We feel the texture of our thoughts, the rhythm of our breath, the simple pulse of being. Many people report their most meaningful moments arising not in grand events, but in quiet ones, in watching snow fall, or walking beneath trees, or sitting by a window with no task but to simply be. Solitude reveals that we are not empty without others, we are full, and from that fullness, we can connect more authentically. Part 19. Culture, Community, and the collective soul. While solitude deepens the self, community expands it. We are not born into isolation. We are born into families, tribes, nations, languages. These shape us, sometimes in ways we do not even realize. Culture gives meaning a container. It tells us what is valuable, what is beautiful, what is worth living for. But it can also constrain, limit, distort. That's why meaningful living often involves a dialogue between self and society, a negotiation between authenticity and belonging. Anthropologists have long studied how different cultures define meaning. In some societies, life is about honor. In others, harmony. In others, progress. There is no single standard. Meaning is shaped by the myths, rituals, and values of the group. In traditional societies, community often plays a central role. Elders pass on wisdom. Celebrations mark seasons. Shared meals, shared griefs, shared dreams, these knit people together. In modern urban life, that fabric is often frayed. People move frequently. Families are spread out. Work can feel isolating, but new communities form. Through shared interests, shared identities, shared struggles. Whether in churches or fandoms, activist groups or support circles, humans keep reaching for connection. And in that connection, meaning grows. Not always through agreement, but through encounter, through listening, through the challenge of seeing the world through another's eyes. Part 20. Legacy, Eternity, and the Human Thread. What will we leave behind? It's a question that comes quietly, often later in life, but it is there in all of us. The sense that we are part of something bigger, something longer, something that will outlast us. Legacy is not just about achievements. It's about influence. It's about love. It's about the small ripples that continue after we're gone. A teacher who changes one student's life, a friend who offers support in a dark time, a story told to a grandchild. These are legacies. So too are the ideas we contribute, the kindness we extend, the values we embody. Even our mistakes can be part of a legacy, if they teach, if they prompt reflection, if they lead to healing. Religions speak of eternal life, not just in terms of duration, but in terms of depth. To live eternally is to live meaningfully, to live with soul. Even in secular terms, eternity can be seen not as an endless stretch of time, but as a quality of the present. A moment so full, so alive, that it feels timeless. When we contribute to others, when we add to the human thread, through art, through service, through truth, we participate in something vast. And in that, perhaps, we find not the answer to the question of meaning, but a way to live the question itself. Part 21. Faith, Doubt, and the Dance Between. Belief and uncertainty. These two forces often pull in opposite directions, yet they are intimately intertwined in the human quest for meaning. Faith is not limited to religion. Faith can be trust in the goodness of others, in the arc of justice, in love that endures, in life itself. It's what lets people move forward without knowing the outcome, to hope in darkness, to begin again. But faith without doubt becomes rigid. It calcifies into dogma. Doubt, in contrast, opens space for humility. It invites inquiry, change, growth. It prevents us from mistaking certainty for truth. Søren Kierkegaard described faith as a leap. not because it's blind, but because it acknowledges the abyss between what we can prove and what we choose to believe. True faith, he said, includes doubt. It's not a denial of reason, but a transcendence of it. In science, doubt is foundational. Hypotheses must be tested, questioned, revised. In relationships, trust is deepened not by ignoring uncertainty, but by moving through it together. The mystic and the skeptic, the believer and the questioner, they all live within us. The dance between them is not a flaw. It's part of the richness of being human. Meaning arises not from having all the answers, but from living well with the questions, from holding both faith and doubt, not as enemies, but as partners in the dance. Part 22. Memory, time travel of the mind. Our memories shape who we are. They are the threads that tie our present self to our past and, often, to our future decisions. But memory is not a perfect record. It is a dynamic, living process, shaped by emotion, altered by context, and reconstructed each time we recall it. What we remember is not always what happened, but what mattered. That's why memories carry such weight. A childhood kindness may shape a lifetime of values. A traumatic moment may color decades of perception. A seemingly trivial event may later glow with meaning when viewed through the lens of loss or love. In this way, memory is a form of time travel. It lets us visit moments long gone, to relive, to reframe, to find new insight. In Viktor Frankl's account of surviving the Holocaust, memory of his wife's face sustained him in the harshest moments. Though he did not know if she was alive, the image of her love gave his suffering meaning. Art and literature are full of such moments, of people revisiting memories, making peace, finding purpose. And when we share our memories with others, we invite them into our world. We weave connection, bridge generations, carry forward lessons. Meaning does not only exist in what is happening now, it pulses in the past, carried through memory, through story, through reflection. Part 23. Meaning in nature. Nature does not ask questions, it simply is. The mountain does not wonder why it stands. The bird does not question its flight. The ocean does not contemplate its tides. And yet in nature, many people find profound meaning. Perhaps it's the beauty, the symmetry of a snowflake, the power of a storm, the stillness of a forest. Perhaps it's the scale, the stars that dwarf our concerns, the age of trees that lived before us. Perhaps it's the patterns, the migration of birds, the blooming of flowers, the constancy of sunrise. Nature grounds us. It reminds us that we are not separate, but part of a vast, intricate system. In times of crisis, people often turn to the natural world for solace. A walk in the woods, the sound of waves, the sight of distant hills. These experiences restore something essential. Writers like Henry David Thoreau, Rachel Carson, and John Muir spoke of nature as a temple, a teacher, a refuge. Indigenous traditions across the globe honor the land, the elements, the animals, not as resources, but as relatives. To see the world this way is to shift from domination to participation, to move from exploitation to reverence. And in that reverence, many find their deepest sense of belonging. Part 24. Humor, joy, and the absurd. If life has no clear meaning, if suffering is inevitable, if certainty eludes us, then what? Some answer with despair, but others answer with laughter. Humor is one of humanity's most powerful tools. It allows us to face absurdity without being crushed by it. It punctures ego, diffuses conflict, and bonds us together. The philosopher Albert Camus embraced the absurd, not as a flaw in life, but as its essence. He urged us to rebel against it not with anger, but with style, with creativity, with joy. Laughter does not solve problems, but it changes how we face them. There's a kind of wisdom in recognizing the ridiculousness of life, the awkwardness, the unpredictability, the contradictions. It keeps us humble. It keeps us human. And joy is meaning made manifest, not the shallow pleasure of distraction, but the deep, quiet contentment of being alive. A song that moves you, a joke that makes you cry laughing, a sunset that steals your breath. These are not answers, they are experiences, and in them, many find enough. Part 25. Purpose, work, and meaningful action. What we do with our time, our labor, our efforts, our creations, often plays a major role in how we understand meaning. For some, work is simply a necessity, a way to survive, to provide. But for others, work becomes a calling, a source of purpose, identity, and fulfillment. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi introduced the concept of flow, a state of deep focus and immersion where time seems to disappear. People often report flow when engaging in meaningful tasks, creating art, solving problems, helping others. In these moments, the boundary between self and activity dissolves. There is no anxiety, no distraction, only presence and purpose. But not all work brings flow. Many jobs are repetitive, alienating, or undervalued. And yet, even in these, people often find dignity through relationships, through service, through pride in doing something well. Meaning does not only come from grand achievements, it can come from small, consistent acts of care, from sweeping a floor, to growing a garden, to crafting something by hand. And for many, purpose lies in contribution, making something better, leaving something behind, lifting someone else up. The nurse caring for the sick, the activist organizing for justice, the elder sharing wisdom. These acts are meaningful not because they are glamorous, but because they are rooted in intention. Purpose may not always be easy to define, but we often know when we feel it, when what we're doing aligns with what matters most. Part 26. Philosophy, science, and the continual search. Some seek meaning through understanding, through logic, through inquiry, through piecing together the puzzle of existence. Philosophy asks foundational questions. What is real? What can we know? What is good? It does not always offer answers, but it refines the questions. It sharpens thought. It expands imagination. Science, too, seeks truth, not through speculation, but through evidence, testing, and revision. The scientific method does not claim certainty. It embraces uncertainty as a pathway to deeper knowledge. Over time, science has revealed a universe far stranger than we ever imagined. Black holes, quantum entanglement, evolutionary emergence, and the vast scope of cosmic history. And yet, even as it explains the mechanisms, science leaves room for awe. Carl Sagan once said, "Science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality." To look into the night sky and know the stars are distant suns, or to gaze into a microscope and see the intricate dance of cells, this too can inspire wonder. The poet and physicist Richard Feynman loved both equations and beauty. He saw no contradiction in delighting in the structure of a flower and its color. The point is not to pit science against meaning, but to see them as companions, ways of relating to the world with curiosity and care. Part 27: Ethics, Responsibility, and the Greater Good. Meaning is not only personal, it's also ethical. What we do affects others. Our choices ripple outward, and meaning deepens when we act with awareness of that impact. Ethics asks, what is the right thing to do? But it also asks, what kind of person do I want to be? From Aristotle's virtue, ethics, to Kant's moral imperatives, from Buddhist compassion to indigenous reciprocity, ethical traditions across the world have sought to ground human behavior in principles that transcend impulse. And while cultures differ, some themes recur: honesty, kindness, courage, justice. Living ethically is not about perfection. It's about striving. It's about choosing to care. It's about aligning action with value. The philosopher Emmanuel Levinas said that meaning begins in the face of the other, that ethics precedes philosophy. Before we think, we feel responsible. And the environmental thinker Aldo Leopold extended the sense of responsibility beyond humans to the land itself. A thing is right, he said, when it preserves the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. To live with meaning, then, is not just to ask what life means to me, but what I mean to others, what my presence contributes, what my absence would leave. In this way, meaning becomes a gift, not only received, but given. Part 28: Mystery, Paradox, and the Space Beyond. Not everything can be known. Not every question has an answer. This realization can be frustrating or freeing. Mystery is not a failure of understanding. It is the fertile ground of wonder. It reminds us of our limits, yes, but also of the infinite. Paradox, too, plays a role. We are both alone and connected. We are small in the universe, yet capable of deep thought. We seek permanence, yet live in impermanence. Rather than trying to resolve these tensions, some traditions invite us to embrace them. Zen Buddhism, for example, offers koans, riddles that cannot be solved by logic. Their purpose is not to explain, but to unsettle, to push the mind beyond its habitual limits. The mystics speak of union with the divine, not in terms of knowledge, but of unknowing, of surrender. And in everyday life, we often live with paradox. We love people we disagree with. We find joy in grief. We act bravely while feeling afraid. These contradictions are not signs of confusion. They are signs of complexity. And in that complexity, meaning takes on depth, not as a fixed point, but as a spacious unfolding. Part 29: Love, Intimacy, and the Human Heart. Among all the themes that recur in humanity's search for meaning, love might be the most persistent and the most profound. Love takes many forms. Romantic love, with its intensity and vulnerability. Familial love, built on bonds of care and history. Friendship, chosen and nurtured over time. And the broader love we feel for life itself, for art, for nature, for ideas. At its core, love dissolves boundaries. It says, "You matter to me. Your joy, your pain, they affect me." It connects the self to the other in a way that transcends logic or calculation. Philosophers like Martin Buber spoke of love in terms of relationship, In his model, there are two primary ways of relating to the world: I, it, and I, thou. In the I, it mode, we see things as objects to use, analyze, or control. But in the I, thou mode, we encounter others as whole beings, as sacred, as worthy. Love resides in the I, thou. It is not about possession or utility. It is about presence, acknowledgement, and reverence. The theologian Paul Tillich said that the first duty of love is to listen, to truly hear another, not just their words, but their silence, their longing, their essence, is to affirm their existence. Love is not always easy. It demands risk. It exposes us to loss. It asks us to open our hearts, even when we are afraid. But in that very risk, it becomes meaningful. To love and be loved is to know in the deepest way that our life matters to someone else, and that theirs matters to us. Part 30. Freedom, choice, and the weight of responsibility. Freedom is often celebrated as a key to happiness. The freedom to choose, to express, to move, to be. But freedom is not only liberating, it is also daunting. To be free means to be responsible for our actions, our choices, our values. It means we can no longer blame fate or tradition or authority for our lives. We must shape them ourselves. Jean-Paul Sartre called this the burden of freedom. He said that we are condemned to be free, not because freedom is a punishment, but because it leaves no excuses. In freedom, we must ask, what kind of life will I live? What will I stand for? Who will I become? And yet, this burden is also a gift, because it means we are not passive. We are not merely products of our environment or our past. We are creators of meaning. Even in the most constrained circumstances, this freedom can endure. Viktor Frankl saw it in the camps, the freedom to choose one's attitude, one's inner stance. And when we use our freedom well, when we align our choices with our values, something powerful happens. Our life gains coherence. It becomes a story we can stand by. Freedom without purpose is chaos, but freedom with responsibility is meaning. Part 31. Gratitude, reverence, and the art of appreciation. Meaning is not only made, sometimes it is noticed. Gratitude is the practice of noticing, of becoming aware of what is good, what is beautiful, what is worthy, even in small things. The sunlight through a leaf, the taste of warm bread, the sound of a familiar voice. These are not rare, but when we see them with grateful eyes, they become treasures. Gratitude shifts the focus from what is missing to what is present, from what is wrong to what is right. It is not denial of pain, but a widening of vision. Religious traditions have long emphasized thanksgiving, not only as ritual, but as a posture of the heart. To give thanks is to acknowledge that life is not owed, but given, that each breath is a gift. Reverence goes further. It is a kind of awe, a recognition of sacredness, not only in temples or cathedrals, but in the everyday. In the Jewish tradition, there is the concept of kavanah, intention, mindfulness, presence. In Zen, there is satori, sudden awakening to the now. Both point to the same truth. Life, when truly seen, is enough. To live gratefully is to live meaningfully, not by adding more, but by seeing more deeply. Part 32. Death, Continuity, and the Infinite Tapestry. And so we return to the end, or perhaps to the threshold. Death, once again, looms as a central feature of human life. Its presence gives urgency to our choices, weight to our moments. But it is not only an ending, it is part of a cycle. In many traditions, death is not the opposite of life, but a transformation, a return, a release, a becoming. The philosopher Alan Watts compared life and death to waves and the ocean. Each wave rises, crests, and falls, but it is never separate from the sea. So too, our lives rise from the great sea of being and return to it. Whether we believe in an afterlife, in rebirth, in the continuity of energy, or in nothing at all, death invites reflection. It asks, have I loved well? Have I lived true? What will I leave behind? These are not questions of fear. They are questions of depth. And in facing them, we often live more fully. We cherish our days. We hold each other closer. We speak the words that matter. Death does not erase meaning. It intensifies it. And perhaps in its shadow, we find the light. Part 33. Synthesis. Threads of meaning woven together. By now, we have traveled across a wide terrain. Ancient myths, scientific discoveries, quiet moments, and cosmic perspectives. And yet, perhaps the most important realization is this. Meaning is not a single thing. It is a tapestry, woven from beliefs, choices, relationships, dreams, doubts, and everything in between. Each thread matters. Each person we meet, each story we carry, each question we dare to ask, they are all part of the pattern. Some threads come from childhood, our first questions, our first griefs. Others from books, mentors, or heartbreak. Some arise quietly in the background. Others arrive suddenly, changing everything. There is no formula, no map, only this truth. Meaning is made. Moment by moment, thread by thread. To live meaningfully is not to reach a destination, but to walk a path with attention, to show up, to ask the deeper question, even when there is no answer. Part 34. The Inner Compass. In a world full of noise, each of us must find our own inner compass. What moves you? What lights you up? What breaks your heart? And what repairs it? These are clues. Meaning does not come from imitation, but from integrity, from listening inwardly, from trusting the voice that says, "This is mine. This matters." It might lead you to art, or service, or family, or solitude, or adventure, or stillness. It might lead you in many directions over a lifetime. The compass doesn't give commands. It invites curiosity. It invites trust. And even when we lose our way, as all of us do, it remains quiet, patient, waiting to be heard again. Part 35. Collective meaning and shared humanity. While meaning is deeply personal, it is never entirely private. We live in a shared world. Our joys and struggles echo in others. Our stories overlap. Our lives intertwine. In times of crisis, wars, disasters, global pandemics, this truth becomes vivid. Suddenly, the boundaries dissolve. We see ourselves in the faces of strangers. We rediscover community. And in that rediscovery, we often find renewed purpose, to build together, to heal together. to care for one another. Shared meaning arises not only in suffering, but in celebration, in music sung together, in meals shared, in marches and rituals and festivals. These moments remind us that we are part of something larger, not only biologically, but spiritually. A web of being, a human family. And when we live with that awareness, life opens up. The question becomes not only, what is the meaning of my life, but also, what kind of world are we creating together? Part 36. Final reflections. The mystery remains. After all the words, all the philosophies, all the searching, one truth remains. The mystery endures. We do not know why we are here. We do not know what consciousness is, or whether the universe has a purpose, or what lies beyond death. And maybe we never will, but perhaps we do not need to know everything to live meaningfully. Perhaps it is enough to wonder, to seek, to live fully in the questions. The poet Rilke once advised, live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. This is the heart of it. Not certainty, but courage. Not knowledge, but presence. Not destination, but journey. Part 37. The quiet miracle of everyday life. It's easy to imagine that meaning lies only in the extraordinary, in grand achievements, spiritual revelations, or transformative adventures. But often, life's most resonant meaning arises in the unremarkable, in the familiar, in the deeply ordinary. Consider a morning routine, the same one you've done hundreds of times. The splash of water on your face, the smell of coffee or tea, the quiet rustle of curtains in the breeze. These moments don't shout, but they ground us. They mark continuity in a world of change. In the philosophy of mindfulness, there's a recurring idea: chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The tasks remain the same. What changes is how we meet them. With awareness, even mundane acts become sacred. A meal shared at the end of a long day. A hand resting on your shoulder. A simple text message that says, "Thinking of you." These things matter. They form the fabric of our lives far more than the big moments do. And meaning too is not a spike, but a thread, a continuity woven through these repetitions. Walt Whitman wrote that, "The powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. But maybe you contribute not with a shout, but with a whisper, not with a spotlight, but with a presence, not with perfection, but with love." Part 38. Healing, wholeness, and the return to self. For many, the search for meaning begins in pain, a loss, a betrayal, a season of confusion or illness. Something happens that disrupts the story we've been telling ourselves. Suddenly what used to feel certain no longer does. This rupture is not the end of meaning. Often, it is the beginning of a deeper one. Psychologist Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. It is not the pursuit of happiness per se, but the integration of all parts of the self, the conscious and unconscious, the shadow and the light, the broken and the strong. Healing in this sense is not about returning to who we were. It's about becoming who we are. It requires honesty about our wounds, our fears, our desires. It also requires kindness to sit with ourselves without judgment, to offer compassion to the parts that feel unworthy. As we heal, meaning shifts. What once seemed crucial may fall away. What once felt trivial may become luminous. And often, in helping others to heal, we deepen our own. Therapists, caregivers, teachers, and artists all participate in the quiet work of restoration. They remind us that brokenness is not the opposite of meaning, it is one of its sources. Part 39. The Ecology of Meaning. Think of your life not as a single narrative, but as an ecosystem. There are seasons, some dry, some lush. There are roots, deep beliefs and memories. There are relationships, like pollinators, like companions. There are invasives, habits or thoughts that threaten balance. And there is weather, external events that pass through. In this ecology, meaning is not fixed. It emerges from interaction, from complexity. When we try to reduce life to one principle, one path, one definition, we lose something vital. But when we honor the diversity within us, when we allow contradictions to coexist, when we recognize that different seasons require different responses, then something alive begins to grow. Some days, meaning may look like ambition. Other days, it's rest. One year, it's found in raising a child. Another year, in letting go of control. Just as an ecosystem thrives through diversity and interdependence, so too does a life. Meaning is less like a mountain to climb and more like a forest to walk through, dense in places, open in others, familiar, yet always changing. And in this forest, every step matters. Part 40. Becoming the meaning for others. There's one more turn to make in this journey. We've spoken of personal purpose, of inner truth, of healing, of wonder, but now we return, finally, to the other, to those who look to you, not because you have the answers, but because you care. To the child who learns what love is by how you speak to them. To the friend who needs you to simply show up. To the stranger who sees in you an example, a mirror, a spark. We often ask, what is the meaning of my life? But perhaps an even deeper question is, whose life is more meaningful because of mine? You may never know the answer. You may never see the effect of your words, your choices, your integrity, but they ripple out. Kindness changes people. Courage inspires. Steadiness anchors. You do not need to be famous or flawless or fearless. You simply need to be real, to be human, to care. In this way, you become the meaning in someone else's story. And that might be the most profound answer of all. Part 41. The lifelong conversation. Meaning is not something we find once and keep forever. It evolves, expands, contracts, and reshapes itself over time. As we age, as we learn, as we lose and begin again, the meanings we hold can shift. What felt urgent in youth may feel irrelevant later. What we dismissed before may reveal itself as profound. This is not a flaw in the search for meaning. It is its strength. It means we are alive, growing, listening. In this sense, meaning is a conversation, not just with others, but with ourselves. A lifelong dialogue between our past, our present, and the futures we imagine. We revisit old beliefs not to invalidate them, but to understand them. We make peace with earlier versions of ourselves. We allow ourselves the grace to change our minds. And when we engage in this inner conversation with honesty, the result is not confusion, but clarity. A living clarity, one that breathes and bends and endures. Part 42. Art, beauty, and the expression of the inexpressible. There are moments that language cannot hold. A painting that stops you mid-step. A melody that breaks your heart open. A poem that says something you've always felt, but never knew how to name. Art does not define meaning. It reveals it. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to the soul. It allows the ineffable to be felt, if not explained. Throughout history, art has been a mirror for culture, a refuge for the marginalized, a bridge between solitude and community. It helps us remember what matters when the world feels cold or chaotic. Beauty, too, plays a role. Not superficial beauty, but the kind that strikes a chord inside us. A beauty that says, "This matters," that lifts us, even briefly, out of our habitual patterns and into presence. In Dostoevsky's The Idiot, the character Prince Mishkin says, "Beauty will save the world, maybe not through politics or economics, but through the restoration of wonder, empathy, and grace." And so, even when we cannot articulate the meaning of life, we might still paint it, or sing it, or dance it, or live it in small gestures, expressive and true. Part 43. Silence revisited. What words cannot reach. After all of this, after thousands of words, countless thinkers, and dozens of perspectives, something becomes clear. The most profound meanings often live in silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of enough. Of having asked the question fully. Of having listened with your whole being. Of having sat with the mystery and found, not resolution, but peace. There's a kind of stillness that follows deep understanding, not because everything has been solved, but because nothing needs to be. This is the silence in the final note of a song that resonates long after the sound is gone. The silence between two people who no longer need words. The silence at the edge of a vast landscape where the sky meets the earth and everything feels whole. In these moments, there is nothing left to say, only to be. And in that being, meaning rests, not as a definition, but as a presence. Part 44, returning to the beginning, the question again. So let us return to the question that brought us here. What is the meaning of life? Maybe it is a question that cannot be answered, but only lived. Maybe it is not one question, but many. Who am I? What do I value? How do I love? Where do I belong? What will I leave behind? Maybe meaning is not a single path, but a landscape, one that each person must explore in their own way. And maybe, just maybe, the asking itself is enough. To care about the question, to wrestle with it, to build a life that feels honest, compassionate, and alive in response to it. This is what it means to be human, to search, to struggle, to create, to connect, to be broken and whole, and everything in between. To wake each day and say, I don't know for sure, but I'm here. I'm trying. I'm listening. And that, perhaps, is meaning enough. Part 45. A gentle ending, an open door. We have traveled together through ideas and centuries, across cultures, disciplines, and emotional landscapes. We've explored life not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived. intimately, thoughtfully, and fully. You've walked beside philosophers and poets, scientists and seekers. You've visited temples and libraries, stood beneath stars and sat quietly in your own heart. And now we arrive not at an answer, but at a quiet moment. A pause, a breath. What you carry forward from here will be your own. Maybe a quote, maybe a feeling, maybe a new question you hadn't considered before. Whatever it is, it belongs to you now. A part of your journey, a thread in your tapestry, a life that means. What does it mean to live a meaningful life? It could mean to live with intention, to say yes to what aligns and no to what doesn't. It could mean to show up for others, even when you're tired, to keep learning, even when the answers don't come easily, to keep loving, even when it hurts. It might mean to plant seeds you'll never see grow, to hold space for joy in the middle of sorrow, to laugh, to weep, to create, to rest. It might mean to tell the truth, or to forgive, or to begin again. Meaning is not a treasure we dig up once and for all. It is something we cultivate daily, quietly, in the way we pay attention, in the way we treat others, in the way we respond to the world. Still becoming. You are still becoming. Who you are today is not who you were 10 years ago, and it is not who you will be 10 years from now. And that's beautiful. Life doesn't ask us to be perfect. It asks us to be real, to be present, to be open to becoming. There will be more questions, more seasons, more turning points. And with each one, you'll deepen your understanding, not just of meaning, but of yourself. You don't have to have it all figured out. You never will, and that's okay.
Keep asking, keep listening, keep living.
A final word. The meaning of life may not be something that can be put into a sentence or a philosophy. It may not be something you can read or learn or earn. But perhaps, when you hold a loved one close, when you look up at the night sky, when you feel music in your bones, when you lose yourself in laughter, when you help someone who needed only to be seen. Perhaps in those moments, you already know, and maybe that is enough.